Have you ever wondered why black folks stop, stare, and soften when they see twins? Why people who barely speak to strangers will whisper to their cousin, "Look, twins," like they've witnessed something special? Join us today as we peel back the curtain on one of the most quietly celebrated, culturally embedded fascinations in Black America. We're talking twins. Yes, twins, identical, fraternal, double trouble. They're praised in church pews, whispered about in hospital waiting rooms, and showered with love in the neighborhood long before they learn to walk. Black twins aren't just adorable, they're deeply admired. Scope News does a deep dive. Long before America, back in West Africa, twins were divine. In Yoruba towns, twin births weren't rare, they were expected, prayed for, welcomed with ritual and drum. They carved their names into wooden shrines, fed them meals even after one had passed. No child was forgotten, no bond dismissed. The British called it superstition. Missionaries tried to ban the ceremonies. Colonial doctors wrote it off as myth. But the twins kept coming. When the ships came for the people, they came for the twins too. The plantations didn't know what to do with them. Sometimes they sold them off fast. Said it wasn't right to keep two of the same under one roof. Said it invited trouble. Said it drew eyes. They weren't wrong. Twins had a way of pulling attention, of reminding people that something deeper still moved beneath the cotton and blood. There were stories whispered in the slave quarters about twins who ran, twins who never got whipped, twins who could feel each other's pain from across the field. Women held on to these stories like rope. In the Deep South, midwives kept the old ways quiet. If twins were born, sometimes one was hidden, tucked behind floorboards, registered under a different name. Rituals were done in secret, not just to protect the babies, but to protect the meaning. The showmen found out eventually. That's when the exploitation began. White folks quickly figured something out. Twins drew crowds. Two babies meant twice the staring, twice the gossip, twice the money. What black families treated as a blessing, white promoters treated like a meal ticket. Twins weren't seen as children anymore. They were something you could sell, put on a poster, charge admission for. Doctors poked and prodded under the excuse of science. Showmen dressed it up as entertainment. Either way, somebody was always making money, and it wasn't the twins. Once white America realized twins could be turned into profit, the line between curiosity and exploitation disappeared completely. Millie and Christine McKoy were born enslaved in 1851 in Whiteville, North Carolina, on the plantation of Jabez McKay. They were conjoined twins, joined at the lower spine, and from the moment they entered the world, their bodies were treated as property. Before they could walk, before they could speak in full sentences, they were sold. Not hired out, sold. Doctors examined them like specimens. Slave traders measured them. Circus agents saw profit. By early childhood, they were being transported across state lines and eventually across the Atlantic, exhibited in Europe and the United States as curiosities. Posters advertised them as wonders of nature. Audiences paid to stare. Scholars paid to prod. None of it was consent. They were called many names on stage: the Carolina Twins, the United Twins, the Two-Headed Nightingale, labels designed to soften the reality that they were enslaved children forced to perform. Their handlers controlled their movements, their earnings, their speech. Even their pain was regulated. Medical examinations were frequent and invasive, justified under the language of science. What rarely gets told is how much they learned anyway. Millie and Christine were taught to read and write. They learned multiple languages: English, German, French. They mastered piano and harp. On stage, they sang in harmony, their voices so precise that European audiences often forgot they were looking at two girls who were still legally owned. Offstage, they observed everything: contracts, conversations, lies. After emancipation, they fought for control over their own lives. They reclaimed their earnings. They bought land. They built a home. They funded black churches and schools, quietly supporting the same communities that slavery had tried to erase. In their later years, they wrote an autobiography, rare for anyone born enslaved, nearly unheard of for enslaved twins whose bodies had been commodified since infancy. They never separated. They were buried together in North Carolina, their shared headstone reading simply, "A soul with two thoughts." Two hearts that beat as one. Among enslaved people, their story circulated differently than it did in white newspapers. They weren't just famous. They were proof. Proof that even under total control, even when your body is treated as a public object, something remains untouched. The bond, the memory, the lineage. George and Willie Muse came next. Albino black brothers, born in Virginia, snatched from their family, renamed Echo and Eco, and marketed as Martians. They toured the country with the Ringling Brothers for years. Audiences couldn't figure out what disturbed them more, their whiteness or their blackness. Their mother never stopped looking. When she finally found them, she took the circus to court, sued, won, and brought her boys home. Even as they were being paraded on stage back home, the reverence continued. And in the heat of the civil rights era, that thread didn't break. Xernona Clayton, born in Muskogee, Oklahoma, became a national figure, organizing for the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, working alongside Coretta Scott King, and later breaking barriers in television and media. What's often overlooked is that Xernona was a twin. Her identical sister, Xenobia Brewster, known within the family as Little, came into the world with her, side by side. Their existence wasn't a headline, but to families watching closely, it meant something. Before Atlanta, the twins moved through Hollywood together. In Los Angeles during the early 1960s, Xernona and Xenobia worked as a unit, fundraising for the civil rights movement among white movie stars and entertainment insiders at a time when few black women had access to those spaces at all. While Xernona appealed publicly for the cause, Xenobia was there, organizing, supporting, and moving alongside her. She even accompanied Xernona and her husband, Edward Clayton of Jet magazine, during that period. Their partnership wasn't symbolic, it was operational. When the work led them to Atlanta, both sisters confronted the brutal reality of segregated medical care. In 1966, Xernona coordinated the Doctors' Committee for Implementation to challenge hospital segregation, and Xenobia was part of that fight, helping push a campaign that reached all the way to the White House. A visit and audience with President Lyndon B. Johnson that year resulted in the desegregation of hospitals nationwide, one of the most significant medical civil rights victories in U.S. history. Two black twin sisters, one often named, one often overlooked, helped change how America treated black patients. That kind of symmetry hits different. Twin brothers Morgan and Marvin Smith, born in 1910 in Kentucky, came up from sharecroppers' fields and brought their lens to Harlem. By 1933, they had moved to New York and opened M. Smith Studios just steps from the Apollo Theater. They weren't just photographers. They were sculptors, painters, filmmakers, documentarians, and they captured Harlem in a way no one else could. Through wars, migrations, and segregation, they documented black beauty in every shade at a time when dark skin was often rejected by Hollywood and the modeling industry. They shot it all. Maya Angelou as a young dancer before the books, Jackie Robinson teaching his son to swing a bat, Nat King Cole at his wedding, W.E.B. Du Bois in the studio, the New York Black Yankees in uniform, always with dignity, always with depth. They gave Black America a visual archive when nobody else was looking, and they did it as twins, side by side, from boyhood in Kentucky to 125th Street and beyond. When Black stories finally broke into mainstream television in the 1990s, it was no accident that one of the most memorable shows featured twins. Sister Sister, starring Tia and Tamara Mowry, became a staple of Black childhood. Two sisters separated at birth, finding each other again. It didn't need explaining. It echoed what had already been passed down for generations. Twins find their way. That same legacy echoed in music, too. Twin performers like Walter and Wallace Scott of the Whispers, who helped to define Black R&B for generations, selling millions of records, performing in harmony not just vocally, but spiritually as well. Even in sports, the pattern held strong. NFL running back Tiki Barber and his twin brother Rhonda Barber, a cornerback, both became legends in their own right, breaking records, earning Pro Bowl honors, and rewriting what black athleticism could look like at the highest levels. They weren't just good. They mirrored excellence. Today, social media acts like twins are a new thing. Coordinated baby photos, pastel balloons, matching footy pajamas, all surface. But in the real spaces, the kitchens, the salons, the fellowship halls, it's still there. That hush when someone says they're expecting two. The nods, the quiet grins. People start counting backward through the family tree. Start talking about who had them before. Modern science finally caught up to what black families already knew. Twins weren't rare at all. They call it science, but to the aunties it's just proof. Scope News tells the truth. Here are the facts. The Yoruba people of Nigeria hold the highest recorded twin birth rate globally. The twin spirits Abeji are honored in Yoruba spirituality through carved effigies and ancestral rites. Millie and Christine McKoy were real conjoined twins born enslaved in North Carolina and exhibited worldwide. George and Willie Muse, two albino black brothers, were kidnapped and exploited in American vaudeville until legally reclaimed by their mother. Civil rights leader Xernona Clayton and her twin sister Xenobia Brewster played a documented role in Hollywood fundraising and the 1966 campaign that led to nationwide hospital desegregation. Sister aired in 1994, starring identical twins Tia and Tamara Mowry. The Whispers achieved multi-platinum success. Morgan and Marvin Smith were Harlem's premier twin photographers from the 1930s-1950s. Tiki and Rhonda Barber became historic twin athletes in the NFL. Legal disclaimer. This content is intended for educational, informational, and entertainment purposes. Viewer discretion is advised, especially when engaging with historical topics involving slavery, medical exploitation, racial violence, and systemic injustice. Scope News relies on verified archival records, oral testimony, and academic studies where available. Images may not depict actual people or events due to licensing and production limitations.